I am making a Millennium deck profile for post Rage of the Abyss. Since one of my friends ended up getting, or I believe he had gotten a case and got pretty much everything except for two copies of a card I was wanting from the set that he wasn't really wanting, so I managed to get most of what I need from Rage of the Abyss, so I have a couple of deck profiles coming as a result. But for now, I figured I would do an updated deck profile for Millennium, and I played it a bit at locals yesterday, and I really liked how I was doing, though I still don't know what three cards to take out of the deck because I know I do want to play three copies of the Melody of Awakening Dragon, as you can use that to add any two dragon or up to two dragons that have 3,000 or more attack and 2,500 or less defense, and it's not a once per turn, so if you have multiples, you can use it multiple times. But starting off with the monsters, I play one copy of each piece of Exodia the Forbidden One. This is only in here so you can resolve Millennium Ankh, though it is technically an alternate win condition. And the only thing that makes me upset with my set of the limbs is that the right leg isn't cute CR where the others are, but that's just because when I ordered off TCG Player, I got sent another right arm instead of right leg. Then, moving on, I play one copy of Fiend Reflection. Oh, let's see, let me get these centered real quick. I play one copy of Fiend Reflection of the Millennium, and one copy of Maiden of the Millennium Moon. Honestly, these were two of the cards I was thinking about taking out, just because they're one-ofs that aren't the greatest. But each of them have the effect, or each of the Millennium monsters, except for Heart of the Blue Eyes, have the effect that you can place them in your hand into your spell and trap zone as continuous spells. And then these two have trigger effects that summon them, whereas the rest you can either pay 2,000 life points or reveal Millennium Ankh to summon them. They believe they have the same trigger. Let's see, what is the trigger? Okay, both of them trigger just when your opponent activates a card or effect to summon themselves, where Fiend Reflection of the Millennium can then target one monster, I can't remember if it's on the field or your opponent controls. Let's see. If this card is, or you have special on this card, then gain life points equal to the attack of one monster on the field, so it doesn't target, which I actually really like, and you can actually use it. If you have an Exodia that's already attacked, you can actually use Fiend Reflection to then gain half life points equal to half the attack of your Exodia, which then can increase your life points even further, and making it even stronger. And then Maiden just makes it so that your opponent can't target your level 5 or higher illusion or spellcaster monsters, which, if I remember correctly, in this deck, that literally is just targeting protection for the big Exodia. Then next, I play 3 copies of Shield of the Millennium Dynasty. Shield of the Millennium Dynasty, like I said earlier, can place itself in the spell and trap zone as a continuous spell. Then you can pay 2,000 life points to reveal Millennium Ankh in your hand to summon it. And then when summoned, Shield of the Millennium Dynasty lets you add a copy of Millennium Ankh from your deck to your hand. Next, I play 2 copies of Golem that guards the Millennium Treasures. Golem does the same thing as Shield, except instead of adding Millennium Dynasty, it lets you add Wedju Temple from your deck to your hand. Next, I play 3 copies of Sengenjin Wakes from a Millennium. Sengenjin does the same thing as Golem and Shield, except instead of adding the field spell or Ankh, it lets you add a Millennium monster from your deck to your hand. And then next, I play 3 copies of Heart of the Blue Eyes. Heart of the Blue Eyes has the effect that you can discard it to then be able to add Millennium Ankh from your deck to your hand. And then it also has the effect that control of it cannot be switched. And then once per duel, if your opponent summons a level 8 or higher monster, or a monster that has 3,000 or more attack, you can special summon this card from your graveyard. I want to say it does more than just those things. Let's see. Graveyard, and you have successfully activated one tool. Okay, but in order for Blue Eyes to summon itself, you do have to have successfully activated Millenium Exodia. So you do have to have summoned the unstoppable Exodia incarnate. Or else I believe that's its name. Yeah. You have to have summoned it at least once in order for Blue Eyes to summon itself. Let's see. Okay, but in order for it to summon itself, it also sends that summoned monster to the graveyard, which I actually really do like. That's non-targeting removal. Let's see, make sure I'm not skipping over anything. I have not. So, just a recap of it. Control of it can't be switched. You can discard to add Millenium Exodia from deck to hand, and then once per duel, if you've already successfully resolved Millenium Exodia, and your opponent normal or special summons a level 8 or higher monster, or a monster that has 3,000 or more attack, you can activate Blue Eyes from the graveyard to then send that monster to the graveyard and summon Blue Eyes. And that effect is a once per duel effect of Heart of Blue Eyes. And then next, I play one copy of Archnemesis Protos and Ashados. Ashados is searchable off of the Melody of Awakening Dragons, so I actually like it as a one-of. And then Protos is just a really funny one-of because fire is prevalent at my locals, so just having the potential to get to it is good enough for me. But they each have a similar summoning condition, where one of them is type and the other is attribute. Where Protos can only be special summoned by banishing 3 different attributes monsters, 3 monsters with different attributes from your graveyard. And then once per turn, you can activate Protos' effect, declaring an attribute, destroy all monsters on the field with that attribute, and then neither player can special summon or activate the effects of the monsters of that attribute that you declared. And also, neither of them can be destroyed by card effects either, which includes their own. And then Ashados is the same thing as Protos, but instead of attributes, it's types. And then next, I play 3 copies of Effect Veiler. Effect Veiler is just during your opponent's main phase, you can discard this card to the graveyard to then be able to target an effect monster your opponent controls and negate it. And then I play 3 copies of Ghost Mourner. Ghost Mourner just has the effect of when your opponent special summons a monster, you can discard it to then be able to target that special summon monster negates effects. And then for the rest of the turn, if that monster leaves the field, your opponent takes damage equal to its attack. Or its original attack. Then I play 3 copies of Ash Blossom Joy Spring. This just says no to anything your opponent tries to do once per turn that involves drawing, adding a card from deck to hand, summoning from deck, or sending from deck to grave. And that's it for the monsters. For the spells, I play 1 copy of Obliterate Blaze. Obliterate Blaze lets you target a level 10 Exodia monster you control. Care if it's level 10 or higher monster on the field with Exodia in its original name. It gains the effects that you can pay after life points, destroy as many cards in spell and trap zone as possible, then equip 5 Forbidden One monsters from your hand and or deck to this card as equip spells that each give it 2,000 attack. Also, you can activate other card effects for the rest of this turn. And then it also makes it so that Exodia can then gain Piercing. And then next, I play 1 copy of Terraforming, just so you can just have basically another copy of Wedge Temple. Speaking of, I play 3 copies of Wedge Temple. Wedge Temple has the effect that once per turn, you can place a monster from your hand in your spell and trap zones and continue a spell. 2, place a Millennium monster from your deck face up in your spell and trap zones and continue a spell. And then if a Millennium monster you control will be destroyed, you can then place it in your spell and trap zone as a continuous spell instead of sending it to the graveyard. believe that's all it does. Let's see, make sure I'm not forgetting anything. Okay, no, I'm not forgetting anything. For some reason, I always think it has a third effect when it doesn't. And then next, I play 3 copies of Millenium Ankh. Millenium Ankh lets you, as the effect that you can activate it, to then be able to reveal 5 Forbidden One cards in your deck or hand, and then be able to summon an Exodia fusion monster from your extra deck. And then the last part of Millennium Ankh's effect is that if after it resolves, it then shuffles back into your deck. So Millennium Ankh kind of just keeps going away, which I think is actually really funny. Which is part of why I like that this deck has multiple ways to search Millennium Ankh, so you should basically have an Ankh at all times. Make sure I didn't forget anything, because I feel like it always has another effect. See, shuffle. Okay, and then after you resolve Millennium Ankh, to then summon the Unstoppable Exodia Incarnate, you then shuffle all face-up monsters you control into the deck except Exodia monster cards, whose original levels are 10 or higher, and Millennium monsters. And then you cannot special summon for the rest of the turn after you activate Millennium Ankh. And then the last card I play is 3 copies of Exod Fires of Rage. Exod Fires of Rage has the effect that if you control a level 10 or higher, I can't remember if it's Spellcaster or Exodia. So you control a level 10 or higher Exodia monster, you can destroy all cards your opponent controls. And this card's in the graveyard except for the turn it was sent there. You can banish it to activate one of the following effects, or you can add a Forbidden One monster from your deck or graveyard to your hand, or you can shuffle up to 5 Forbidden One monsters from your graveyard and are banished into the deck. You can only use each effect of Exod Fires of Rage once per turn. One other thing I did think about doing with this deck was instead of playing hand traps, was play 3 copies of Sangin and Witch of the Black Forest, just as a backup way of being able to try to quickly get to the pieces of Exodia in case you need to rely on the backup strategy. But that is it for the main deck. I'm still tweaking the extra deck, as it's pretty much just a bunch of links plus 3 copies of Exodia, the Unstoppable Exodia Incarnate. But for links, I play 1 copy of IP Masquerena, just so you can use it to link into something on your opponent's turn. 1 copy of Barricade Board Blocker, as you can use this to protect Wedgie Temple and your Millennium monsters that are in your spell and trap zone. Then I play 1 copy of Moon of the Closed Heaven, just because if you're using Moon to then summon your copy of Underworld Goddess, then you can use 2 of your opponent's monsters for summoning of Underworld Goddess. Where you can use Moon, 1 more of your own monsters, and then you can use 2 of your opponent's monsters. Specifically, though, Moon of the Closed Heaven has to use a monster that your opponent controls that's in a zone it points to. Then next, I play a Phoenix, Cerberus, and Unicorn. They each have an effect on summon where you discard a card to then target a specific type of card, except Unicorn, and then do something to it. Cerberus will let you target a special summon monster your opponent controls in the main monster zone to then destroy it. Phoenix lets you target a spell or trap your opponent controls to destroy. And then Unicorn lets you target 1 card your opponent controls and shuffle it into the deck. Whereas I think it might be a card on the field. Let's see. Yeah. Unicorn lets you target a card on the field to shuffle into the deck. And then they each share the effect that if they're co-linked with something, then you can draw 1 card after their effects resolve. And then they also have other effects, but those effects are hardly ever used, so I won't even bother going over them. Then I play 1 copy of Topologic Trisbana. Trisbana has the effect that if a monster is special summoned to a zone it points to, it can then destroy, all spell and traps on the field? I forget exactly how Trisbana works. Okay, you banish as many monsters that are summoned to zones it points to as possible, and also banish And also, yeah, and then you also banish all spell and trap cards on the field as possible, and then you inflict 500 to your opponent for each card that was banished by its effect. So I like using Trisbana as a card I can use to burn in time. Then I also play one copy of Topologic Bomber Dragon, as I can use Bomber Dragon to just clear the main monster zones if needed. As I can just summon a Millennium monster to its zone, get a search, and then Bomber Dragon just put that Millennium monster back in the spell and trap zone, while also clearing my opponent's main monster zones. And then if Bomber Dragon destroys a monster in battle, your opponent takes damage equal to its attack. Just the usual. If it attacks an attack position monster, your opponent takes 3,000. And then I play one copy of Topologic Zeraboros. Let's see, you can have special monster to extra monster. The extra monster zones at points 2 gets 200 for each rage card. The monster is special zone to a zone that scores points 2. You banish all cards on the field. But Zeraboros just has the effect where it gains 200 attack for every banished card, and then if a monster is summoned to a zone it points to, then you can activate its effect to banish all cards on the field. And that you also cannot summon any monsters to the extra monster zone it points to. And then lastly, during the next standby phase, after it was banished by its own effect, you can special summon it back. Like I said, though, most of the extra deck is just Link Toolbox, more or less. Then I play one copy of Access Code Talker, just because I can use it to banish Link monsters from my graveyard that have different attributes from each other each turn, to then just destroy cards on my opponent's field. One copy of Mech Knight Crusadia Avramax, as Avramax can be a really hard wall to get for your opponent to get over, especially if you make it with IP Masquerena. Then I play one copy of Underworld Goddess of the Closed World to round off the links. Like I said earlier, this is mainly used so you can link off 2 of your opponent's monsters. But when it's summoned, then you can negate the effects of all face-up monsters your opponent currently controls. She's unaffected by any cards or effects your opponent uses that do not specifically target it. And then lastly, it can, once per turn, negate any kind of Monster Reborn-esque effect. And then lastly, for the extra deck, I play 3 copies of the Unstoppable Exodia Incarnate. The Unstoppable Exodia Incarnate has the effect where it can't be destroyed by, I believe, your opponent's card effects. So you cannot be destroyed by opponent's card effects. And then once per turn, if it battles, during the damage calculation, you can increase its attack equal to your life points. Which I actually like that it increases, because that means it attacks and then it keeps the attack points equal to your life points. It's also a once per turn spell trap negation. And then I believe it also has the effect of taking away 1,000 life points during your standby. Let's see, where is that part? Okay. And then once per turn during your standby phase, you lose 1,000 life points. That's a mandatory effect. And then its final effect is during the end phase, you can set an Exod or Obliterate spell or trap from your deck. Which usually I set Exod Fires or Rage, but you can also use it to set Obliterate Blaze. So like during my turn, my end phase I set Exod Fires or Rage. My opponent ends their turn, I'll set Obliterate Blaze, so I can use it so that Exodia has Piercing. But that is it for my Millennium deck profile. If you have any ideas what I can do to improve the deck, any ideas for decks like to see face each other, or decks like to see be made in the future, feel free to comment down below. I always read the comments. Thank you for watching.